Are you guys ready? Oh, I'm so excited. Look at my mug. My sister visited me from New Jersey. She went to the Harry Potter store recently and got me this mug. I mean, look at this. It's so iconic. Today we're talking about Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the 4th Harry Potter book. So these videos, if you haven't seen the first 3, I'm going through reading Harry Potter once again. I've read it before. And just talking about the difference between the movies and the books. Books are a big commitment to read. Not everybody is interested in reading them. Or maybe you read them in childhood and you don't really feel like you want to read them again. I'm here for you. You may have maybe forgotten the differences between the movies and the books, or simply just didn't know the differences, and I'm here to tell you about them, okay? The creative liberties that they took with the movie. So, as you may or may not know, the movies are directed by different people. The first 2 were Chris Columbus, if you will. The third is Alfonso Cuarón. And then the 4th one is Mike Newell, and the last one, so 5th, 6th, 7-1, and 7-2 are David Yates. Now, if you've only watched the movies once or twice, maybe you watched them in childhood, you might not recognize the differences between the movies, the differences that the directors made. But if you watch them a lot of times, or if you're somebody who, you know, notices these kind of things and cares about these kind of things, it's very easy to tell the differences between the movies. Now, I don't want to get on a David Yates hating train. We're not even to that movie yet. We have not gotten to the 5th one yet. But I will say that in the lineup of all of the directors, David Yates is at the bottom for me. I really love the 4th movie and the way that the 4th movie was done. Feels like almost like the most accurate of all of the movies beside. Okay, it's hard to put the first 2 in that lineup because the first 2 books are very short and they're very simple, so it's very easy to make them accurate. Starts to get difficult in the 3rd one. The 4th one, the book is so long, much longer than what they would be able to fit into a movie, and I think that he did a great job of attempting it. Let's just jump into it. I love this book. I had a lot of fun reading it. If you hear thunder, boy, isn't that nice? Am I right? Okay. This feels like the first movie where they really had to start condensing it. And it's up to the directors. I mean, I don't know what the difference in roles is 100% between directors and writers, but I think it's up to the directors whether what things get cut and what things are absolute musts, and then what things get changed a little bit so that they can be in the movie in a shorter, so that they can get the point across in a less amount of time. And I think that this movie does a really good job of it, but there's no denying there's some things that they just skip over and they have to. So highlights, I have my, so this is not just big things, but it's also little things that I just thought were interesting. Another interesting thing is that they kind of skip over how Harry gets to the Burrow, but he does indeed get to the Burrow somehow. And the way that he gets there is by, they come to pick him up. The Weasleys come to pick Harry up at the Dursleys' house. And it's funny because the scene is very funny. The Dursleys are ready for them. They're in their best clothes. And they're very nervous, asking how are they coming? And Harry's like, oh gosh, I don't know. And they're asking they're saying I hope they know what to wear, etc. They end up coming through the Floo. They opened up the Dursleys' house for Floo travel, but the Dursleys' fireplace is still boarded up, so they all get stuck. It's Mr. Weasley, Fred, George, and Ron all get stuck behind the boards, and there's all this confusion. And Mr. Weasley has to do quite a bit of magic in this scene. Fred and George they accidentally give an engorgement charm candy to Dudley, and his tongue gets stretched. And when Harry is saying goodbye, Mr. Weasley gets really upset that they're not, Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon are not don't seem to really care that he's leaving or even that he said goodbye. Well, bye then, Harry said to the Dursleys. They didn't say anything at all. Harry moved toward the fire, but just as he reached the edge of the hearth, Mr. Weasley pulled out a hand and held him back. He was looking at the Dursleys in amazement. Harry said goodbye to you, he said. Didn't you hear him? It doesn't matter, Harry muttered to Mr. Weasley. Honestly, I don't care. Mr. Weasley did not remove his hand from Harry's shoulder. You aren't going to see your nephew till next summer, he said to Uncle Vernon in mild indignation. Surely you are going to say goodbye? Uncle Vernon's face worked furiously. The idea of being taught consideration by a man who had just blasted away half his living room wall seemed to be causing him intense suffering. But Mr. Weasley's wand was still in his hand, and Uncle Vernon's tiny eyes darted to it once before he said, very resentfully, goodbye then. When Harry gets to the Weasley's house, guess who's there? Charlie. Charlie and Bill are both there, and they both get introduced for the first time. Now, in the movie, there is no Charlie, and I get it, there's a lot of Weasleys, so I guess we didn't really need another character. He's not a big character in it, but he is another Weasley. You know, they could have, in my opinion, they could have managed to put him in there somewhere, but let me just read kind of what he looks like, or his introduction. How are you doing, Harry? Said the nearer of the two, grinning at him and holding out a large hand, which Harry shook, feeling calluses and blisters under his fingers. This had to be Charlie, who worked with dragons in Romania. Charlie was built like the twins, shorter and stockier than Percy and Ron, who were both long and lanky. He had a broad, good-natured face, which was weather-beaten and so freckly that he looked almost tanned. His arms were muscly, and one of them had a large, shiny burn on it. And then Bill got to his feet, smiling, and also shook Harry's hand. Bill came as something of a surprise. Harry knew that he worked for the Wizarding Gringotts, that he had been head boy of Hogwarts, and had always imagined Bill to be an older version of Percy, fussy about rule-breaking, and fond of bossing everyone around. However, there was no other word for it, cool. He was tall, with long hair that he had tied back in a ponytail. He was wearing an earring with what looked like a fang dangling from it. His clothes would not have looked out of place at a rock concert, except that Harry recognized his boots to be made of not leather, but dragon hide. So that's the introduction of the two oldest Weasleys. Unfortunately, we missed that. I think Bill in the movies is pretty good. I mean, I can barely say anything against the actor. He's one of my faves, but could have been a little bit more accurate to the books. But that doesn't matter because he doesn't come out in the fourth movie. Next, Cedric's dad. So we're moving on. They're going to the World Cup. On their way to the World Cup, just like the movie, they meet Cedric and Amos Diggory. And Amos Diggory is kind of the worst. He's rude. I can see, here's what I wrote. I can see Cedric only becoming a Hufflepuff because he spent his whole life being extra nice because his dad is a meanie. And that's how I feel, okay? Ced's talked about you, of course, said Amos Diggory. Told us all about playing against you last year. I said to him, Ced, that'll be something to tell your grandchildren, that will. You beat Harry Potter. Harry couldn't think of it. Keep in mind that he's like 2 or 3 years older than Harry. Harry couldn't think of any reply to this, so he remained silent. Fred and George were both scowling again. Cedric looked slightly embarrassed. Harry fell off his broom, Dad, he muttered. I told you it was an accident. Yes, but you didn't fall off, did you? Roared Amos genially, slapping his son on the back. Always modest, said, always the gentleman. But the best man won. I'm sure Harry'd say the same, wouldn't you, eh? One falls off his broom, one stays on. You don't need a genius to tell you which one's the better flyer. So, and that's not the worst of it. That's actually like the best of it. So it goes downhill from there. I just don't like him. He sucks, okay? That's all. Also, there's a scene that always really bothered me in the movies where they're going to the World Cup and they're like getting to their seats and Malfoy and his dad are down there. Pretty much he goes the iconic line. Let's put it this way. If it were to rain, you would be the first to know. Anyway, point is, I always thought like, wait, isn't it good to be high up because this is a flying game? Well, first of all, yeah, it is. They're at the top in the book. Secondly, They got the tickets from the minister. He won them or something. So the tickets he won were in the minister's box. They're not like he could barely get he could barely get his hands on the worst. No, they only went because they won tickets, and it was in the minister's box. And there's a lot of people there. The Malfoys are there, and we are introduced to Narcissa for the first time. And then also, the Crouches are supposed to be there, but only their house elf is there because their house elf is saving a spot for Mr. Crouch, presumably, and he never shows up, and she's terrified of heights, so of course Hermione is all upset about that. And so that's the story there. So Death Eaters also... in the movies, it seems like it was kind of a, like, organized event that happened afterward, but it was not. And it was just like they were drinking and they just, like, decided to, like, torture some people and be crazy. And it was totally an unorganized event. And they also tortured the Muggle family that was there, who was, like, directing people to where their tents were. Like flying them in the air and spinning them around, and this included a young child, and I didn't want to, like, it was actually really hard to read. So anyway, it was just more obvious that it was like they're just like being antsy and being crazy, and spoiler, but Barty Crouch Jr. is like, he gets like wrapped up in it, you know, he's like, oh yeah, and that's why he does the Dark Mark. Also, we get to see Mrs. Weasley being like super distraught when they come back from the World Cup. Because she hears what happens, of course, and she was not there. And she is absolutely out of her mind distraught, and I just thought that was really sweet. Even though me and Mrs. Weasley, I don't know, we're not so tight. I'm reading the 5th one right now, and I don't know. Also, she's also sucks in this one. Is this one and the next one she started. Okay, Mrs. Weasley. Mrs. Weasley of the movie is icon, top of the line, best ever, legendary. Mrs. Weasley of the books? Oh, no. They took a Muggle taxi to school. So, pretty cool, alright? And Harry was, like, so embarrassed the whole time because they had all their owls and everything in there. And he's the only one that knows, like, this really is not normal. So he was, like, dying of secondhand embarrassment. And Bill and Charlie, since they're there the whole time at the Burrow, they keep dropping hints about the Triwizard Tournament. But, like, the kids aren't supposed to know about it, so they don't know what it is. But they are, like, very frustrated and know that, like, something is going to happen. And the older boys are being very, you know, about it. They love that they're in the know about something. And so it's just kind of a fun little, like, we get to see something's gonna happen. Another thing is that we learn, I may have mentioned this actually in a previous, because I feel like they maybe talked about it before, but we maybe learn, or once again learn, that Padma, which is Parvati Patel's sister, is not, or twin actually, is not in Gryffindor. Like, she's in the movie, she's actually in Ravenclaw. Okay, so them walking around being like, hi Harry, in the Gryffindor common room, didn't happen. The schools, this is kind of a, like, doesn't matter in the grand sense scheme of things. It does not matter, and this is the kind of thing that they had to cut out. But the schools both don't arrive until October. They find out about them the first day, but they don't arrive until October. So we're having just like normal school stuff, which is like a hallmark of the Harry Potter books. We're just having normal school stuff until October, which is nice. Another thing is that, okay, once the schools do come, Harry's name gets picked. They go to that back room. They have a very long discussion. It's much longer than it is in the movie. The funny thing is that Moody, or should I say Barty Crouch Jr., is... he actually... okay, so in the movie he says the first half of this line, but he goes on in the books. Here's the line, and you'll recognize part of it. Because they hoodwinked a very powerful magical object, said Moody, it would have needed an exceptionally strong confundus charm to bamboozle the goblet into forgetting that only 3 schools compete in the tournament. I'm guessing they submitted Potter's name under a 4th school to make sure he was the only one in his category. Either he's got to be really confident or really dumb, because that is exactly what he did. But the fact is that he was confident, because he got away with it. So I guess he knew what he was doing. I mean, all about him being crazy. He's pretty sane for a crazy guy, am I right? This is not in the movie either. Not that important, but it's very character developy. Malfoy, everybody's mad about Harry getting in. but Malfoy is even more. Anyway, they get into it in the hallway, and they both hex each other, and they both ricochet off. Harry's hits Crabbe, I think, and Draco's hits Hermione, and it makes her teeth grow. Her 2 front teeth start growing. And she already had pretty big front teeth, and that was like a complex of hers. And she's like trying to hide it. She's crying. She's so frustrated. Snape comes up, and Snape, he says, I see no difference. And they're like past her chin. She's like trying to cover them up. And he said, I see no difference. And went on his merry way. Oh, Snape is the worst. He's the worst. Anyway, she goes to the, I think she goes to the hospital wing. Yeah, she goes to the hospital wing and to get them shrunk, and she shrinks them back to like a normal size. So smaller than they were before. And that's that. Okay. Also, I get it, dramatics, but during the first task, they didn't leave the arena. The dragon did not go out of there, and the dragon did not die. After Harry gets the egg, he kind of coaxes it around, and he gets the egg. A bunch of people, probably Charlie, come out and subdue the dragon, and everything is fine, and it's over. Okay. Ron, it's just kind of funny, because, oh, you know I've really been through it with Ron. It's like, I feel like I'm going through the gauntlet for Ron. I'm not a Ron stan, but the fact is that, like, I'm trying to be really, really unbiased toward Ron and just be like, let's take him at face value and make our, you know, take him at face value from the books and make our judgment about him based on that. Well, he's making it really hard for me, okay? Because in the first 2, I was like, you know what, Ron's not that bad. Everyone's, he is that bad. Okay, Ron stans don't come for me, but he sucks so much. First of all, in the 3rd one, he's in this stupid fight with Hermione, like the entire book. And then in this one, he's just like dumb, and he's very mean to Hermione. Okay, don't get me started. He has no reason to be mean to her. She's nice to them. She's a good friend. She's always looking out for them. Like, yeah, she's a know-it-all. But anyway, I don't want to get into it. Anyway, the point is, during the Yule Ball, he's even meaner. Like, I feel like, what's his name? Mike Newell? I already forgot. Yeah, Mike Newell. I think he even made him, like, this movie, and the rest of the movies, they're making him more mean than he is. This one, he dials back. He's a, Ron is a little bit much, so let's make him even less mean than he is. Yeah, he was much more mean in the books. During the Yule Ball, all of the stuff that went on, it was worse. The conversation was longer. He was being more mean. It just sucked. And he was that mean to, I don't remember who he's with, Padma or Parvati. Whichever one of them he was also mean to. Then they do get into it. I know that people already know this, but I do find myself thinking about, like, is Harry really a half-blood? Is Harry full-blood? Is Harry whatever? I mean, I know he's not a pure-blood, but, you know, it's not like race. Like, it's not like, oh, you know, because you can pop out a wizard being not a muggle, I mean, a muggle. So it's not quite like race. So, I mean, I know that he's not pure-blood, but they do call him a half-blood in this movie. This is the first time I feel like they say it. He's a half-blood, even though both his parents are wizards. His mother was Muggle-born. The song that the mermaids sing, this is pertinent information, and I'm a little bit frustrated. This is one thing that I'm frustrated that they took out, which it wouldn't have made it much different if they had left it in. Like, it wouldn't have taken much more time, but it would have made a big difference, I mean. Is that the song that the mermaids sing is longer, okay? Come seek us where our voices sound. We cannot sing above the ground. And while you're searching, ponder this. We've taken what you'll sorely miss. An hour long you'll have to look in, and to recover what we took. But past an hour, the prospect's black. Too late, it's gone. It won't come back. So there's 2 verses that they took out of that, and from the movie. In the movie, they just say, come seek us where our voices sound. We cannot sing above the ground. An hour long you'll have to look to recover what we took. So they take out the prospect's black and you not getting the thing back. So it makes Harry look like kind of a dum-dum for thinking that they would die. Which, I mean, like, yeah, it's, you know, it's a school, so, like, would they really kill people? But, I mean, the Triwizard Tournament is, like, very serious. And people do die. So he took it very seriously. And in the book, it was a little bit less, like, what a dum-dum for thinking that you would die. Even though he was, like, he was embarrassed. Because apparently nobody else thought it. Who was, like, none of the other champions. But I just thought that it makes more sense to his, like, frenzy and his craze, and it's not just him being dumb. Like, he was actually nervous for their lives. On the day of the second trial, Harry is woken by Dobby in the library, and Dobby, he still doesn't have any idea what he's gonna do. And Dobby, Neville's not included in this at all. Dobby is like, I figured it out for you, and you need gillyweed, and I already took it from Snape's office, or from his stores, and here it is right now. And you need to go because you're late. Like, literally run. So he books it. He has 10 minutes to get there. He books it to the place, to the lake. And they're actually at, like, the beach of the lake, and they have to walk in. He takes the gillyweed and he walks up to his waist, and, like, nothing is happening. He feels so dumb because everyone's already gone. But then it starts working, and so everything is good. But yeah, Neville had nothing to do with it. For once, they put Neville in where previously they always take him out. After the Yule Ball and everything, Hermione's, like, getting death threats from people for being involved with Krum, even though she's, like, not involved with him. And Ron is kind of, like, on the death threats train. He's, like, just being mean to her. She gets undiluted booba-tubered pus in a letter, and she's, like, crying, trying to get it off of her hands, and it starts to, like, she gets sores all over her hands. Harry's like, you better go to the hospital wing. We'll tell Professor Sprout. And then Ron goes, I warned her, said Ron as Hermione hurried out of the Great Hall, cradling her hands. I warned her not to annoy Rita Skeeter. He's just being dumb, not supportive at all. It's like as if she did something wrong. She literally did nothing. She just went with Krum to the Yule Ball. And he's like just being the worst about it. Hedwig didn't return until the end of the Easter holiday. Percy's letter was enclosed in a package. They're waiting for a letter from Percy. A package of Easter eggs that Mrs. Weasley had sent. Both Harry's and Ron's were the size of dragon eggs and full of homemade toffee. Hermione's, however, was smaller than a chicken's egg. Her face fell when she saw it. Your mum doesn't read Witch Weekly by any chance, does she, Ron? She asked quietly. Yeah, Ron said, whose mouth was full of toffee. Gets it for the recipes. Hermione looked sadly at her tiny egg. She's like being mad at Hermione for going to the Yule Ball with Krum, and then like believing all this stuff that's being written about her in the gossip pages, and being like, wow, she really snuffed Harry, even though like she knows Harry, she knows Hermione, she's seen them together all the time, she knows that there's nothing going on between them, and she still. That's all. Okay. And then page 384 is where there is a difference that is a little bit larger, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter, but it's a bigger difference. Sorry if you can hear the rain. It's actually started pouring outside so hard. Mr. Crouch goes crazy in the woods. Now, this scene kind of stands out to me because I remember this like from childhood. Like I remember this was one of the big differences. This scene really like stuck with me. Krum takes Harry aside to the Forbidden Forest. He takes him like outside to have a word with him, and he pretty much asks him like, hey, what's your deal with Hermione? And Harry's like, I have no deal with Hermione, we're just friends. And he doesn't really believe him, and then it's this whole thing. Anyway, they see Mr. Crouch in the woods. He's talking to a tree, trying to dictate stuff to Percy Weasley. Now, Percy Weasley is his right-hand man. Pertinent information is that Mr. Crouch has not been around. He has been gone since like halfway through this whole tournament, and Miss Percy has been like getting letters from him and like making directions, etc. For him, but he hasn't been nowhere to be seen, and they keep asking like, hey, where is he? And Percy's like, oh, he's just on vacation, he's sick, or he's blah blah blah. Kind of sus situation, but anyway, so Krum, they see him and he's like going crazy, trying to talk to. He's like just being crazy. Krum is like very weirded out by this and very nervous in this situation. Crouch starts asking for Dumbledore, saying he needs to warn Dumbledore about something. He's saying other random stuff too. He's kind of just going on and on. And Harry is like, he's gripping on Harry, and Harry's like, crazy. He's like, I'm gonna go get Dumbledore. He runs to go get Dumbledore. He tells Krum, like, stay with him. I'll be right back. He runs to get Dumbledore, and he sees Snape. And Snape is like, what are you doing? And he's like, freaking out. Finally, Dumbledore comes. They go on together, but they don't find Crouch. He's gone. They go into the forest a little bit, and they find Krum, who's been stunned. They reinnervate him, and he's like, he attacked me. Dumbledore calls for Moody, or he's like gonna call for Moody, and then Moody is right there. Interesting. Anyway, point is, that scene was quite a bit different. Moving on to the third task, 427, Amos Diggory once again being kind of the worst. And the sweet thing is that they have a meeting with the families before the third task, and the Weasleys come. Very sweet. The Weasleys come for Harry, and so he has some family there. Bill is there, and that's when he meets Fleur. If you're thinking, how the heck do they know each other? This is how. That's how. It was this scene. That's how. Here's a little excerpt. "You all right?" said Bill, grinning at Harry and shaking his hand. "Charlie wanted to come, but he couldn't get off in time. He said you were incredible against the Horntail." Fleur Delacour, Harry noticed, was eyeing Bill with great interest over her mother's shoulder. Harry could tell she had no objection whatsoever to long hair or earrings with fangs on them. And then later, as they passed Amos Diggory, he looked around. "There you are you?" he said, looking Harry up and down. "Bet you're not feeling quite as full of yourself now Cedric's caught up to you in points, are you?" "What?" said Harry. He's just like, Harry's like 14, okay? Stop being mean to him, all right? So on to the third task. One thing that's different is that Crumb actually casts Crucio on Cedric, and it hits him. So that's how they like know that he's been like cursed, because Crumb is like a pretty cool guy all around. And then at the end of the third task, when they're arguing about who should take the cup, the argument goes on for a little bit longer. Really makes you understand why she chose a Hufflepuff for the other champion, because especially when she never really ever mentions them, because like he really, like he's just so good. He literally walks away from the cup. So he's just really he's just so kind. He's very kind. He's a real Hufflepuff. The graveyard scene is pretty much the same, except that when the Death Eaters come, one of them kisses Voldemort's, the hem of his robes. Gross. And then the scene of finding out about Barty Crouch Jr. was also pretty similar, but it was way more fleshed out, and they question him. At the end of Harry Potter books, there's got to be a lot of questions answered. Questions and answers. And they do that. They talk at length about how he did this. And that's one thing they don't quite go into in the movies. They just don't have time. So pretty much, let me just read it out because I put down the cliff notes here. He explains how he was at the World Cup under the invisibility cloak with Winky, how he stole Harry's wand, etc. Of course, he also explains how he got out of Azkaban, which was by disguising himself as his mother, using Polyjuice Potion, and his mother stayed in there. She was really sick, and he left with his dad, and then he was kind of like imprisoned at home with his dad. It was the mother's wish that he be taken out. The dad was like, Then he explains how they found out about Bertha Jorkins and got information from her about the tournament, etc., and then killed her. Point is, they don't talk about Bertha Jorkins at all in the movie, but she was a big mystery in the books that was talked about many times about where Bertha Jorkins was. She was somebody who worked at the ministry. They were really nervous about where she was, and they were thinking like, oh, she probably just like got into something and told somebody the wrong thing, and I don't know, she's probably been killed. But she was missing the entire book. Voldemort actually found her in some forest with Wormtail and tortured her until she told him everything about Moody teaching at Hogwarts and how Barty Crouch Jr. was out of Azkaban but imprisoned in his home. So Voldy knew he was still a faithful servant, so he went to find him. And I'm not sure how she knew. I can't remember how she knew that he got out of Azkaban. I don't remember that part. Voldemort went to Crouch's house and put Barty Crouch Sr. under the Imperious Curse. Early on. They kept him locked up, Barty Crouch Sr., after he started fighting the Imperious Curse, which was about halfway through the year. Crouch Sr. escaped, and he was half crazy, of course. He'd been under the Imperious Curse for months. Then Crouch Jr. killed him in the woods. They put him in custody. They put Crouch Jr. in custody at Hogwarts and fudge the Dementors on him, and they kiss him like that, take his soul like that. He cannot corroborate story at all. So then it kind of works out for Fudge. Fudge is just like, well, he deserved it, right? And it brushes it off, and to be honest, it really shows Fudge's character and his incompetence. He knew he could not deal with Voldemort being around, so he just said that Voldemort's not around. Fudge and Dumbledore get into a scary fight, like a fight about Voldemort, and Fudge is in such denial that Snape voluntarily shows his dark mark, that it's black now, in front of the entire room, which is like Fudge, Harry, Dumbledore, I don't remember who else is in there. I thought that was the badassest moment. Let me close this. Now I know why it's so loud. It's hailing. Okay. Anyway, I know I just got done talking about how much Snape sucks, because he does suck, but I thought that was like, dang! He really did that thing. Voluntarily, he's like, oh, I'm so done with this. And he walks up, he goes past Dumbledore and he's like, whoosh. So cool. Hermione finally, this is another thing they didn't have in the movies, she finally tells them about how she had gotten Rita to stop spewing lies, is that she captured her in a bottle because she is a beetle Patronus, not Patronus, a beetle animagus, and she's been having her in this bottle, and she's been, you know, controlling everything that she says. So anyway, they didn't have that in the movies at all. Rita Skeeter just kind of like disappears until the 7th one. But no, she's just like, Hermione blackmails her. That's what happens. Okay. Next is Ludo Bagman, who is also, I think he might not be in the movies at all. If he is, it's very, very small. But I think they just took him out. He is, I think he is the top of magical games and sports at the Ministry. He's kind of a like funny guy. He's really trying to help Harry, and it's like very obvious that he's trying to help Harry. And even Harry is like, hey, aren't you like, isn't that a conflict of interest? But anyway, let me just read this. He is a betting man, and he gets in way over his head during the World Cup. He gets in over his head with the goblins and stuff. I mean, it's bad. And he owes money to Fred and George because they bet that the Irish would win, but Crumb would catch the snitch. And like, so they would have gotten a ton of money because nobody else was gonna guess that. He didn't pay them, and they've been kind of blackmailing him the whole year. And then he, after the 3rd test, like literally disappears. And so they have no hope of finding him because he's like running from the goblins and stuff. So he's serious. They have no hope of finding him. And they're really devastated about it because we're going to really help their joke shop with that. So Harry gives them his entire winnings. They didn't say this in the movie, but he got a lot of galleons. I don't know how much it was. A bunch of money. And he gives it to the Weasley's brothers for their joke shop. And he says, consider it an investment. It's just very sweet. I just feel like that was so nice. All in all, like things that I dislike about the movie, there's not much. Because it's really accurate. They did take a few things out, but a majority of it is quite accurate. I think that the director did a really good job of condensing it down. The real complaining starts with the next book, which is the first movie directed by David Yates. I'm gonna try not to get into it too much in that. But anyway, what did you think of this video? What did you think of these differences? What do you think? Tell me. What's your favorite? What's your least favorite? Hope you loved it, and I will see you in the next one.